Welcome to the Book Party Podcast.
Join us as we journey into the world of books with Michael T.
Prepare to be captivated by engaging interviews, insightful discussions, and fascinating stories. You'll discover new adventures and gain insight into the creative process of the authors themselves as they share their struggles and accomplishments. Now let's hear from Michael T.
This is Michael T. Thank you for being with us this morning. To all our listeners, I would invite you to go to bookpartypodcast.com. That's bookpartypodcast.com. Hit that subscribe tab on top, then scroll down to the icon of your choice where you can find us on one of your favorite platforms, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Odyssey, and you can download us and follow us there. Please don't forget to sign up for our newsletter and get the latest information on our upcoming shows. Today, I would like to introduce our guest, Bruce McIntyre, and his book, There Are No Answers Here, Only Questions. That's the book of the day. Anyone knows him, it's just Bruce. Retired business owner and cancer survivor. He was born in St. Louis, Missouri, 1941, often moved while growing up. After spending 17 years in corporate business, Bruce founded and managed a food service sales and marketing agency for 30 years. So, No Answers Here, Only Questions is his first published work in his writing. Bruce shows his ability to successfully move from transmitting boring business memos to the art of telling a good story. Bruce, why don't you take it from here? Fill in the blanks. Tell yourself to our listeners.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you for having me on Book Party Podcast. It's a pleasure to be with you. Well, as you said in the introduction, I'm a past business owner, a cancer survivor, and a pretty ordinary guy, I would think. Of course, I'm privileged in the way that I am male, I'm white, and educated, so I think that has given me a leg up in my career path. Certainly it opened doors for me when I started at Procter & Gamble way back in 1963. Led me up the corporate ladder, and then after 17 years I decided to strike out on my own and see if I really was as smart as I thought I was and start my own business. And that turned out to be more challenging than I thought it would be.
Sure.
But after 30 years, the business was successful, and I was ready to move on, to transition out of that, and at the same time develop cancer. So that's kind of my story, and that's the one I tell in the book. But in terms of me as a person, as I write in the author's notes in the beginning of the book, you may know me from family or business or community, but you don't know me as anyone famous. I mean, I've never done anything remarkable, nothing different than what anyone else would have done if they were me, but people are not me, and that's how it should be, because we all have our own story. And if you're as old as
Sure
I
we
am,
do.
and if you're and if you're as old as I am, or even if you're not, my one piece of advice is to share your story with others while you still can.
Absolutely. You know, you're an individual that understands that making decisions has consequences.
Yes,
And when you don't make a decision, that's actually making a decision in itself,
absolutely.
and some people don't understand that. They'll just say, well, I'll just not make a decision. That is a decision.
Yep.
Not making
Yeah.
a decision is a decision. And all decisions have
even
consequences.
saying I'll think about that tomorrow is a decision you've made not to do it today.
Absolutely. All right, so let's get to a little bit about your book. Are you a self-publishing author, or did you go through an agency?
I am. This book is self-published. We did that for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you if you're not with one of the top big five agencies in New York, and even if you are, the minute you sign on with them, you lose a great deal of control over the manuscript, the covers, the marketing, so much of the contents of the book, unless you're somebody like Stephen King or Barack Obama or Michelle Obama, someone like that. Um,
Right, right.
but in the case of an ordinary person like me, getting on with one of the big five is pretty difficult. You end up with one of the smaller agencies, and even then, you're pretty much on your own for the marketing of the book. But you still lose control over the cover, the design, the layout, and you also postpone the whole publication process. You can be
That's correct.
2 to 5 years waiting for a book to hit the market. And when you're 82 years old, as I am now, um, I don't know how many years I wanted to wait. This book
No,
was published.
you're absolutely correct, and a lot of people don't understand that,
Yeah,
and they say, "Oh, well, I'll go through an agency," and immediately start losing control of their book. They hire an agent,
exactly.
and they're spending money, and
Yeah.
the delays and the decisions are made for them. Okay, so did you collaborate on your book? Did you like get an editor and a formatter and a cover designer, things like that?
Yes, I did. I didn't have all of those uh, professionals on board in the beginning, of course, when I was just doing rough drafts and first and second drafts. Um, but as the book started to shape up, it became clear to me that I would need all of that. And so the first hire was a developmental editor by the name of Betsy Thorpe, and she was incredibly helpful. We put together a team including Catherine Bardis to do the copy editing, Kathy Brown to do the proofreading. Um, the cover was done by Darcy Wade, and the art director for the book was Diana Wade. So that team pulled it all together, and without them, it would not be the finished product that it is today.
Correct. Yeah, my books, I my first book. I say this a lot, but I tried to do the cover myself, and what a
Hmm.
disaster that was. So I reached out and got a cover designer and saved that. And they say the saying goes, I should put it that way, that you can't judge a book by its cover. Now that's like people and whatnot, but in a book, it's judged by its cover. If you
It's
got a
certainly the
terrible,
first thing
nasty
you
cover, they're
see.
not even going to look at the book.
Exactly.
Okay. So you have to have a good cover. So I had to get salvaged that way. And I actually had it published for a couple of weeks. It was just a disaster. I pulled it down, had the cover done, and re-uploaded it into the KDP because I was self-published anyway. And that was a big saving grace. So for my next two books, I used the same cover designer,
Yeah.
and I had developed a team to do what I needed done. I do my own editing, but I had, the formatting done for me. So now I have a full team,
Yeah.
and I can pop through a book rather quickly. That first one, it took some time to
Yes.
get the right people in place to do it. Now I got a team, and I can just
Yeah.
really go through a book rather quickly because I do nonfiction, so I got to have a solid outline. I've got to
Right.
really investigate that outline. And then I get my chapters set up and my subheadings set up, and I start writing. And with what I'm doing with podcasting does slow me down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But I have the time to, then I can start writing. And then once that's pretty much done, then it flows.
Yeah.
And it goes really, really fast for me.
Yeah. Well,
So now I'm trying to.
I find that there are certain things, for example, the Chicago Manual of Style is a big, thick volume that I don't think any layman fully understands. And so if you're going to write and follow the more or less set rules of the Chicago Manual of Style, you're going to need a copy editor and a proofreader that understand that because few
Right.
laymen do.
Exactly. And what I want you to do, well, let me make this quick comment first. No matter what age, I've had as young as 12 years old that has published a novel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Fantastic job. Very intelligent. Published her own novel. And she was an indie author. She did absolutely everything herself.
Wow.
She had no team whatsoever, did it all herself and published. And amazing talent. She's going to be a rising star, and she's already planning on 3 more. She's going to do a series. So then you're probably the oldest author I've had on a first book, which is fine because what I'm going to say
I
here
take
is
great pride in that, actually.
Yeah, and what I'm going to say here is when you're finished and that book is published, you don't even have to have your first sale. When it's published, that feeling is, I am published.
Yes.
And it's a fantastic feeling
Yeah.
to say, I'm published.
Yes.
Wow, I'm done. I have a finished product, and it's a book.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people can say that.
Well, that's right.
I'm sure you've got friends that, they've got accomplishments and everything else, and you can say, but are you published? Anyway, that's what I want you to take us through right now is in writing your book, take us through the point that you would consider your worst author moment.
Well, there are many, but maybe the worst was it wasn't exactly the first draft. I mean, the first draft was horrible, but I'd gotten to the second, maybe the third draft, and these aren't total revisions, but they're polishing efforts, and I still didn't really think I had anything that caught. I had asked the family, many of the family members, to read it, and they'd been gracious enough to do so. But it was one of our granddaughters. We have 2 granddaughters, and it was Ellie, who is now in law school, who read it and very tactfully came to me and said, "Granddaddy, I think it's great, but I'm on about
It's
page."
always the but, huh?
Yeah, exactly. "Granddaddy, I think it's great, but I'm on about page 95, and you're just now really getting into the story. Don't you think you could start this whole thing sooner?" And I said, that's an interesting idea. So that is when it went from maybe the worst moment to maybe there's hope here. And I took Ellie's advice and thought about how the book could start much quicker. Um,
There you go.
now the reader gets an idea of what's going on in the first 4 paragraphs. So you're only 4 paragraphs into the book, and I'm selling a business and I've got a lump on the side of my neck. So you
Okay.
already know there's something going on here.
All right. Okay. On the other side of things, when you're writing a book, somewhere along the line, you're going to be doing something else, whether it's driving, whether it's having a bath, whether it's cooking, it doesn't matter. And all of a sudden you have an epiphany. You have man, this light bulb just goes off in your head. You got to get a paper and a pen. You got to write something down right now. Because if you don't write it down right now, it's going to kind of fade, and you have to write it down right now. Take us to a moment like that.
Yeah. Well, possibly, and this would come after I had talked with Betsy Thorpe, the developmental editor, and we had talked about the fact that we really had two stories going on. One, the sale of the business, and the other, the treatment for cancer. And she had talked about kind of how we could bring those two stories together. And maybe the epiphany moment you're speaking of, Michael, came with the idea of taking those two stories and treating them as two decks of cards and shuffling the two decks together so that each story would start, each story would end, but it would bounce back and forth
Kind of
from the sale
intertwined.
of the business to the treatment of the cancer, to the sale of the business to the treatment of the cancer. And so there are short chapters, maybe only 2-3 pages long, where in one chapter the sale of the business is progressing, and then we go to a chapter, the sale of the cancer or the cancer treatment is progressing, and then when we're finished with that, we go back to the business. And so the whole theme through the book bounces from one to the other, and I think that works because if somebody's not particularly interested in the details of the sale of the business, and I try to not get too specific there, but talk more in general philosophical terms of losing control and that kind of thing. If someone's
More
not
interested in
particularly
the
into
cancer
that,
part.
yeah, if they only have to put up with that for another page, and then they're into the cancer treatment, and they really dig that,
Right.
and
Okay.
and so then. But then they have to bounce back and read a little bit more about the sale of the business, so it just keeps going back and forth.
Right.
And
So
that
you've
seems to
intertwined it.
hold people's interest.
So how has your work with people and nonprofits influenced your writing?
Um, well, I think a couple of ways. I think that I think I've always been, even back in the business days, I've always been a bit of a storyteller. Always used the telling of stories rather than just the uh, laying out of a policy to communicate with people. And at the same time, I've been a storyteller. I think I've also tried to be a story listener. And I think there is even more valuable lessons in listening to people's stories than there is in telling your own. Um,
Right. Right.
so
A lot of people need to learn that.
very often with the nonprofit experiences, especially working with the homeless, um, listening to their stories without question makes me more empathetic, and I think that makes me a better writer.
That's great. A lot of people need to learn to listen more than, you know. Okay,
Exactly.
in surviving cancer, uh, the difficulty of facing, the radical uncertainty and the therapeutic process of writing about it, how have you dealt with that?
Well, it probably, maybe the best way to answer that is because the cancer was in 2010, And this book was written over 4 years between about 2018 and 2022. So there had been 12 or 13 years transpire between the treatment and the time I was writing about it. I think from a therapeutic standpoint, thinking about what I thought then versus what I think now is where the transformation happens. Transformation is simply that. It's simply the progression of where you were to where you are. And so thinking back on what I thought about the treatment 12 years ago, 13 years ago, um, how difficult that was, how difficult I thought it was, um, but then surviving it, and how I look back on it in many ways almost fondly now because I think it was beneficial um,
Right.
to the. This is going to sound absolutely ridiculous, but to say that in many ways it was a blessing that I went through the cancer. It was helpful, so I don't resent it. I appreciate it,
So writing
especially
about
since
it,
I survived.
s- right? But so writing about it was a therapeutic process then.
I think so. Yes.
Okay. Well, what about the thought process of writing a book at 80 years old? I mean, it took you a long time to actually really write the book.
Right.
And writing a book at your age, at 80 to 82 years old, what do you think about that? Do you care? I mean, age doesn't really have a limit at writing a book because
Well, no, it doesn't, and I think I'm sure that most of our listeners are much younger than I am. I hope so. And I think they would agree with me that age is more a state of mind than it is a number on a birth certificate. So whether you write a book at 20 or 40 or 60 or 80, um, it's an exercise in telling a story and conveying a message. And so I think in many ways, for people my age, that's very good from a cognitive awareness and development stage. I think doing all of that stresses your mind, and I think like any form of exercise, it becomes a workout, and that's
absolutely. And
healthy.
I've had one author that completed her first novel at 12 years old by
Yes, you told
herself.
me.
She
Yeah,
had co-authored
yeah.
she had co-authored two other books before that.
Wow.
And I don't believe in labels. Labels belong on cans and packages.
Yeah,
Labels don't belong on people.
yeah,
And this is proof of that. You can't
yeah,
put a label on a 12-year-old and say you can't write a book.
yeah.
And
You're
you
not
can't
old
put a
enough
label on
yet.
an
Yeah,
80-year-old and say you can't write a book. You can't
yeah,
do that.
yeah.
So anyway, okay, here I'm going to ask you this question. What is the one thing that you are the most fired up about, excited about right now, today?
I guess. Well, the book was published on March 1st of this year, so um, that's only a few short months ago, and I guess the thing I'm most excited about maybe is the acceptance that the book has received. Not only am I here visiting with you today, which is an honor, but there have been good reviews written. Other authors have made very positive comments, so I guess probably that's the thing I'm most fired up about. When I was writing this, Michael, I said, if one person reads it, I'll be happy. Well, hundreds of people have read it, and more than that, and So I'm really ecstatic about it, and the fact that they've had good things to say about it makes me very happy.
That's fantastic. Again, this is Michael T., and I thank you for being with us this morning. To all our listeners, I would invite you to go to bookpartypodcast.com. That's bookpartypodcast.com. Hit that subscribe tab on top, then scroll down to the icon of your choice, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeart Podcasts, Odyssey, where you can find us on one of your favorite platforms. You can download us and follow us there. Please don't forget to sign up for our newsletter to get the latest information on our upcoming shows. Now, Bruce, we're entering the lightning round. In the lightning round, we have 4 pointed questions for 4 pointed answers. Okay? So, before you started writing this book, what was the one thing that was holding you back from becoming an author?
Well, first, I was a business owner. Second, I had to treat cancer. So those were the two things that held me back until the cancer treatment was over. When the cancer treatment was over, I did write a weekly blog for 4 years. So that produced over 200 articles of about 1,000 words plus or minus a piece. So there are 200,000 words that are available to anyone on the internet right now. The subject is Choices Do Matter, and that's the name of the site, www.choicesdomatter.org. There you'll find my writing. But when that was over, it was time to move on to the memoir, and so that's what came after that. But specific answer to your question, what was holding me back? Life.
Okay. All right. What was the best advice in writing your book? What was the best advice you had ever received?
Well, maybe the best advice in my entire life was get it down. Pen to paper is best. You can have all the thoughts in the shower you want, but if you don't write them down, you're going to lose them.
There you go. Share one of your personal habits that contributes to your success.
Write something every day, even if it's only on the back of a cocktail napkin or something you put into your phone. Get something written every day and keep track of that. A daily journal is great, whatever works for you, but write every day.
Okay. In your writing, share an internet resource that you can share with our listeners.
Well, your favorite search engine. If
I'm sorry?
you've got your favorite search engine, whether it's Google or whoever it may be, if you've got any question at all, the answer is out there. So just ask the question, and if you don't get the answer you want, ask the question a different way.
Right. Okay. Okay, Bruce, we are now going to enter the grand finale. So, what I'd like you to do is tell our listeners a way they can get in touch with you or follow you, find your book, and then take your time and just tell the listeners about your book.
Okay. Well, first of all, my website is probably the easiest way to learn about me, keep up with what's going on, to contact me, and to start a conversation, as well as sign up for updates on where I'm appearing, what I'm doing, so forth. And that web address is www.charlesbrucemcintyre.com. Again, that's charlesbrucemcintyre.com. In there are links to other social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, and you can get to know me as a real person there. The Other place, I guess that people can follow along is in using the website to listen to various podcasts like this one. Um, all of them are there, along with all of my appearances, along with various photographs from the appearances, candid shots, action shots at readings and so forth, so you get the feel of me as a real person. As for the book itself, it's memoir. It's factual. Everything in it's true. None of the names have been changed. Um, and maybe the best overview of the book would be if I look at a review that Midwest Book Review is publishing in July and August and share a paragraph from their review. Our listeners will get a brief glimpse of what the book is about. They write, "There are no answers here, only questions, details, transitions, and life-changing moments that happened not once but twice, nearly concurrently, making big changes in McIntyre's life that resonate to this day. One story covers selling the business he'd built for over 30 years. The other involves his battle with cancer. Both transitions introduce cathartic changes which would transform the remainder of his life in different and unexpected ways. Readers who choose There Are No Answers Here, Only Questions for its dual themes of professional and personal transformation will find the memoir also introduces a particular form of philosophical life inspection that holds insights and thought-provoking moments for anyone on their own journey through transitional times." That was from Midwest Book Review, their July-August issue. That gives you a bit of an overview of the book. Then Kirkus Review was very generous and in their review of the book and made a comment that may speak to me a little more personally as an author. When they write in a paragraph, in the opening of his memoir, McIntyre writes, "I've never done anything remarkable, nothing different than what you would have done if you were me." This sense of humility, which is present throughout, makes the author's story approachable and appealing. The author never crows about his success, both in business and his battle against cancer. Instead, he is eager to use his experience to advise others. His go-getter assertiveness naturally shines through at times, regarding an occasion in which he turned up at his doctor's office without an appointment when the lump did not improve. He writes plainly, quote, "Because sometimes you don't call, you go," end quote. This polite pushiness should inspire others to be proactive about their health care when they believe something is gravely wrong. McIntyre's writing also has a qualitative and meditative quality charged with warmth and wisdom. Quote, "I knew I was simply one of the billions of people on earth connected to this place, to Joyce and my family. I was complete. I didn't need to do anything but be in the moment." End quote. Reading the text feels similar to sitting down with a wise old friend, one who will offer business advice but also encouragement to see the bigger picture. The author's business success are compelling and his cancer struggle is courageous. But what truly makes this memoir stand out are the memorable nuggets of wisdom that McIntyre imparts. Recognizing opportunities for growth, even in the most difficult of circumstances. McIntyre writes, quote, "It's hard times that shape people and companies," end quote. A highly readable and sagacious account of overcoming obstacles and building success. that was written by the Kirkus Review people recently. So that's a bit about the book and about me as a person. Again, I would encourage the listener to go to www.charlesbrucemcintyre.com. There you'll see all of that, as well as see how you can order the book wherever you buy books. It's also available on Kindle, and also there's an audiobook narrated by my good friend Alan Taylor, who was the weekend anchor on a local television station here in Charlotte, who is now doing voiceover and audiobooks in Nashville, Tennessee. Again, his name is Alan Taylor. I think more people follow him than follow me, so there have been people who have bought the audiobook just to listen to Alan's voice rather than learn my story. But I'm fine with that.
Right. Okay. Well, Bruce, we thank you so much for being here with us today, opening up to us, and I'm sure our listeners appreciate this too. Again, this is Michael T., and I thank you for being with us this morning. To all our listeners, I would invite you to go to bookpartypodcast.com. That's bookpartypodcast.com. Hit that subscribe tab on the top and scroll down to the icon of your choice where you can follow one of our favorite platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeart Podcasts, or Odyssey. You can download us and follow us there. And please don't forget to sign up for our newsletter to get the latest information on our upcoming shows. This is Michael T. signing off.
You must not miss our next episode as we delve into a world of inspiration, entertainment, and thought-provoking insights. Join Michael T. on the next Book Party podcast and experience a new adventure, a new story, and a complete immersion into the world of Pages Unveiled, Chronicles of the Writing Journey.